I'm here today with Kevin Riggs. Kevin Riggs, you were the work at Randall Communications, right?
That's correct.
And you're a longtime KCRA reporter. So can you go ahead and just give us a little bit of background as to who you are?
Sure. I worked at KCRA TV in Sacramento, the NBC affiliate. I was the station's political reporter, capital reporter, and did some anchor work as well. I spent about 30 years in television news. I started at KCOY in the Santa Barbara Bureau, and then went to the ABC affiliate in Fresno, and then to Sacramento. So all told, about 30 years in the television news side of things. And then about a year and a half ago, I left and went to work for Randall Communications. My job there is to work with different kinds of clients, trade associations, nonprofits, corporations on messaging, media issues, media training, and so forth.
Now, and you still work with KCRA as an analyst, right?
I still have my foot in the media world in that I go back to KCRA and serve as their political analyst during special occasions, election night, state of the state, state of the union, that kind of thing. And also, if the reporters need an analyst type expert to comment on whatever political story they're working on, then they can come by and talk to me. So I still have a regular on-air presence, and I'll also be doing some blog posting for the TV station as well.
Okay. And then you were a Cal Poly alumni. You graduated from here. I won't say a long time ago, but you graduated from here.
It was a long time ago, but you're very kind.
Okay. So can you tell me about your time here at Cal Poly?
Well, I came here, I transferred from a community college down in Ventura, and I came here with the idea of, I was a journalism major. Obviously, you have to declare your major to get in here, but I thought I was going to go into either public relations or print journalism. And I walked into KCPR, and somebody, the news director or somebody said, with a voice like that, why aren't you doing broadcasting? So I decided to kind of move in that direction. So I worked on the news staff at KCPR, and I also still worked at the Mustang Daily, contributing editorials and so forth. But I ended up with a degree in journalism with a broadcast concentration.
Okay, so what did you learn from Cal Poly journalism?
Well, a lot of the basic blocking and tackling skills that you need to be successful, I learned above all, the importance of good writing, the importance of concise, fact-based, consistent writing. And that's been true in no matter what field of journalism you might want to go into. I learned the importance of deadlines, of being able to meet rapid deadlines. I learned the importance of preparation as far as doing interviews. I remember one of the first assignments I had was to go interview the district attorney of San Luis Obispo County. And I remember thinking, I was a little bit nervous about it. I thought, well, what am I going to talk to the district attorney about? And you realize, look, he's an elected official. He is answerable to the public. I have every right to sit down with him and ask him questions. And the key was to be prepared, to think about ahead of time, what am I going to ask him, listen to his answers, follow up if necessary, and do a professional interview that way.
So it's important in your time at Cal Poly to go through and meet those people, go through the exercises, and learn how to ask questions to the big name politicians.
You have to do that, and the only way that you learn that is by simply going through that experience. So going to city council meetings, going to board of supervisors meetings, setting up interviews with the mayor or the district attorney or a county supervisor. That gives you that real world grounding. And of course, we've all heard the Cal Poly motto of learning by doing, and that's in its purest level how you do it.
So I know here at Cal Poly, we kind of have a fortunate, a lot of people say, oh, we're in San Luis Obispo, small town news, you don't get to learn anything. It's just, you're interviewing, talking about cows in the roads for traffic, that kind of stuff. But I've found it's kind of a good thing in some ways, because it's a smaller market, so you get to interview some of the bigger name people. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think because it is a smaller community, there's a greater level of access that student journalists would have to some of the newsmakers, more so than you might find in a Los Angeles or a San Francisco. The political figures, the elected leaders, I think are going to have more time on the natural. They're going to realize the importance of granting access to student journalists. So in many respects, working in a smaller place, you do have more opportunities.
Okay, so here at Cal Poly, it's been a few years, so and you're on the advisory board. What has Cal Poly journalism done well in the time since you've left?
Well, it was a very strong program at the time that I was here. It had won a number of awards, had a very strong faculty. A lot of us who graduated went on to very successful careers in broadcasting. And you can go down the list. David Curley, who's now an ABC Washington correspondent, and Conan Nolan, who covers politics for Channel 4 in Los Angeles. Rick DeBrule, who worked for years at the NBC affiliate in Phoenix and now does a lot of sports reporting and race car reporting for ABC and ESPN. So a lot of us obviously learned a great deal back then that's kind of set us on a road to a successful path. In the time that I've been on the advisory board, they've really made a lot of progress as far as revamping or working to revamp the curriculum. I mean, journalism is not what it was, obviously, when I went to school here. And what today's journalists, what future journalists need to know is that you have to know how to produce on a number of different platforms. It's not just broadcast, it's not just print, it's not just the internet. You have to be able to know how to produce content on all those platforms. I know that the department is working in moving in that direction, so that's an important part of it. And I mean, I look at this television studio, Ed, I mean, there was no television operation when I went to school here. You had the radio station, you had the newspaper, you had PR concentration, and you had a little bit of ag journalism, but certainly nothing like this. So a lot of progress has been made, especially in the broadcast side when I look at the facilities and the resources here.
So obviously you talked about what has changed. Now what really hasn't changed here that is really good?
Well, again, I think the concentration on good writing, that's something that really has not changed. That's a universal, and that's something that students of my time had to learn. That's what students of today have to learn as well. And I think, again, the philosophy of, look, you need some real world experience. You can't just learn it in the classroom. You need to get out and do newscasts, either for the student operation, or if you can get an internship with a local operation, local media outlet, you can learn skills that way as well. So the focus on real world experience outside of the classroom hasn't really changed, and that to me is very valuable.
Okay, and what needs to change here at Cal Poly? Obviously, there's always something you can work on.
Well, I think there needs to be a greater emphasis on learning how to be a good journalist across multiple platforms. So you have to be able to learn how to shoot, you have to know how to edit, you have to know how to write, you have to know how to use your voice properly if you're doing broadcast. You have to be able to, again, write in a effective manner and meet deadlines. So those are all things that continue to be improved upon, but it's important for students to learn if they're going to be successful out there.
Okay, so moving on a little bit. So you finished up Cal Poly, you got your first job at KCRA, you said? Mm-hmm. So how did you get your first job?
Well, my first job, actually, I always thought I was just going to do radio. I mean, I really did not have a strong thought that I was going to be in television news. So my first job was as the assistant news director at a radio station called KATY. Used to be over on Monterey Street above Hathaway Motors, no longer on the air, it's gone. But as the assistant news director, I went to work for a Cal Poly alum who was the news director, and my job was to cover city council meetings, San Luis Obispo, and then do newscasts, put together and announce newscasts on the weekends. So that was my first job out of Cal Poly, and then I went to work for a radio station in Santa Barbara, was news director down there for about a year, and at that point I got a job at KCRA in Santa Maria, but I was the bureau chief in Santa Barbara. So, and again, it was a lot of it because of connections I had through Cal Poly and the knowledge that I had gained in the market that helped me to get that first job at KCRA.
And how did Cal Poly prepare you for that job?
Well, I of course knew the area and the community quite well. I knew the issues. I had good connections and good contacts, and that's a great way to sell yourself when you're looking for that first job, because you may not know, you may not have television experience per se, but if you know journalism, if you have good connections, if you're well sourced, in other words, if you can convince the managers you're somebody who can get in there and get to the people who you need to speak with, and have access to the people you need to cover stories and cover news, that's a big part of the battle right there. And so I would say that was a big part of it, not only just the journalistic standards, basic standards that I had learned, but also the opportunity to learn the community, learn the newsmakers, and give me greater access.
Now, something we all learn here at Cal Poly is that from our professor, Richard Gearhart, is that your first job, you're going to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. But it's important to learn on the job. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. It's a different world today than when I started, in that if you made a mistake in a small market, that's pretty much where it stayed. Well, with YouTube and all that, mistakes can often be distributed instantly to a very wide audience. There's always that risk, and that didn't used to exist. But in terms of learning on the job and making mistakes in small markets, that's still very much true. That's very much true. The whole idea of starting in a small place is to get those mistakes out of your system and learn from them, and then move on to the next place and not repeat the same mistakes.
So then you moved on. You eventually went to KCRA and became the state Capitol debate reporter. How did you get to that level?
Well, some people have asked me how I got involved in covering politics to begin with. I always sort of gravitated in that direction because I started off covering San Luis Obispo City Council meetings, so purely local politics. But I was interested in it. I was interested in the dynamics between the politicians. So, effective political reporting doesn't involve just showing up and telling the listeners or the viewers what happened. You have to explain why it happened, or to give people some sort of perspective. Here's what happened in the past, and that therefore is what led to what happened here. I always tell people the reason I kind of moved into politics more and more was a couple of things, and these seem like they're not connected, but you'll understand. I talk about organic chemistry and I talk about Ronald Reagan. What's the connection? Well, I initially started off in college at the community college level thinking I was going to be a dentist. Okay? Sounded great, right? But the problem was I didn't think about the fact that I had absolutely no aptitude for the sciences. So I got to organic chemistry, hit a wall. I said, okay, this isn't working for me. Decided I needed to move back into the direction that I was strong in, which was writing and journalism. And then when I was in Santa Barbara, Reagan, of course, was in his first term in the White House. He would come out to his ranch near Santa Barbara frequently for vacations, and the White House press corps would move west, and they would set up the whole White House apparatus there at this beachfront hotel. They had daily briefings. Whenever a big event would occur, the media would be doing stories on it. I went up to the president's ranch when he signed a big tax cut bill one year. So I got to witness firsthand the White House political experience. And that got me more and more interested in covering politics. So when I went to Sacramento, which is where I had wanted to go, it was natural for me to cover state politics. So when I got there, I started off covering Governor Wilson, and then went to Gray Davis, and then to Schwarzenegger, and then to Jerry Brown. So it just became a natural progression. It was my interests plus those early exposures to the Reagan White House.
Now, what's a cool story you have from your career? Now, I know you've been there through the Gray Davis years, which are crazy, but there for Arnold Schwarzenegger and the circus that was of his whole campaign. I'm sure, didn't I see on Facebook a couple weeks ago you interviewed the Queen or something? You're there for the Queen? Or?
Oh, well, that was an interesting experience. That was in 1983. The Queen had come to California, and they had sailed their royal yacht, the Britannia, up the coast from Mexico. And so they had stopped in San Diego, and then they eventually went to Santa Barbara, and she went up to the president's ranch in a rainstorm and had lunch with him. But the way I got to meet her was they had a press reception on board the royal yacht in San Diego. And I had gotten this invitation from the palace. And so it's funny, the invitation's very, very specific. It says 11:20 a.m., not 11 o'clock, not 11:30, 11:20. dress, the invitation says, lounge suit. To this day, I don't know what they mean by lounge suit. I wore a coat and tie. But I got on board the yacht, went up this ladder, went through this doorway, and there she and the prince were. And I shook both their hands, and we made some small talk about the weather. And then the Royal Navy lieutenant took me firmly by the elbow and escorted me off to the bar to get a drink. So they had quite a system going. So that was how I had the chance to meet the Queen. Just one of those moments that make a career in journalism so rewarding. The chance to get to meet somebody like that.
Now, how do you go through an event moment like that and you go, wow, I'm meeting the Queen? Because sometimes you're so caught up in the story of, I got to cover this, I got to get this interview, I got to get this question. How do you sit back and just go,
well,
I'm enjoying the event?
I was fortunate in that incident because it was on the weekend and I wasn't actually covering the Queen's visit to San Diego. I covered her visit to Santa Barbara. So I went down to San Diego and I wasn't facing any deadlines that day. I just simply got to go on board, meet her, go to the reception, and enjoy the reception without having to actually turn a story. A very rare thing, but in that case, that's what I got to do.
Okay. And lastly, as we're wrapping up, any advice for someone looking to get a job in journalism as a reporter?
You need to be, I know that you've heard this before, but it's absolutely true. You need to be persistent, and you need to not take rejection personally, because everyone is going to go through that. There are a lot of people like you out there looking for these jobs. And so just be aware that you have to constantly reach out to these news directors and news managers. You're going to get rejections. Can't take it personally. You got to keep moving forward. And just be aware that you need to be very flexible about where you go. If you have to go to a very small place in a very small state, so be it. That hasn't changed. Just be aware that if you're persistent and if you tell the people that you are interviewing with that this is why I should be hired. I mean, I may not have a lot of real world experience, but nobody will work harder than I will. That's a critical piece of information to pass on to the person you're interviewing with.
All right. And that's going to do it for us here. Thank you for joining us, Kevin. You can catch our other interview with Christina Favuzzi and Conan Nolan on our website, mustangdaily.net/CPTV.